My name is Denise Appleby, and today I want to talk with you about simple IRA plans. Why? Because October 1 is the deadline to set up a new simple IRA, right? We need to be talking about something else. So here's my top 5 feature for a simple IRA. The contribution limits are low, but they can be mandatory. And mandatory can be hard, even if it's 1%, because, if an employer doesn't have it, if they have a loss from year to year to year, and they can't find 1%, then that's an issue, right? So you got to make sure your client is aware of that. The low contribution percentage, which can be from 1% to 3%, seems attractive, but that's high when you don't have the funds. How would a contribution to a simple be mandatory? The employer can choose between 2 types of contribution. A matching contribution, where the employer makes a matching contribution of $1 for $1 up to 3% of compensation. That can be reduced to no less than 1% for 2 out of every 5 years. If the employer chooses the matching contribution, only employee that makes salary deferral contribution would be entitled to a matching. So in that case, it would be mandatory to make the matching contribution if employees make salary deferral contribution. So that's contingent. The other option is a 2% non-elective contribution. If the employer chooses a 2% non-elective contribution, then every eligible employee must receive the 2% contribution, whether or not they make a salary deferral contribution. Something to discuss with your client who's thinking about a simple IRA. The 100 employee limit. Had a client his client that was a small business, had a small business owner with almost 200 employees. But because of the definition of a 100 employee limit, they were still able to set up a simple IRA because less than 100 employees met that requirement. So just because someone has more than 100 employees does not automatically disqualify them. The percentage of employer contributions can be reduced. I like that feature. The employer says, I'm choosing the matching contribution $1 for $1. And they choose the 3% for the years that are good. In the lean years, they can reduce it to no less than 1%, but they can do that for 2 out of every 5 years. If the employer is making the matching contribution and 1 year they switch to the 2% non-elective contribution, that year that they switch to the 2% non-elective contribution counts for one of the 3 years that they're required to make the contribution of no less than 3%. The October 1 deadline is only for new plans. Remember to ask your client, did you have a simple before? Because if you did, then we got to have a conversation, because the October 1 deadline does not apply to you, and you got to wait until next year if we're past January 1, because January 1 was the deadline. The simple IRA plan agreement determines where employers must send contributions. That's my number 5 feature. Here's what I mean. When the employer sets up a simple IRA, they can choose the Form 5304 Simple, the Form 5305 Simple, or a prototype simple agreement. The Form 5304 is not subject to a designated financial institution. If the employer uses that agreement, they have to tell employees, oh, you can set up your simple IRA where I send your contributions with any financial institution that will allow you to. Now, if the employer has 100 employees, that might not be a good thing, because what if the 100 employees choose to go to 100 different financial institutions? Then they got to write 100 checks to send to 100 different financial institutions. If the employer chooses the Form 5305 Simple, then let's say the employer chooses to establish the simple with custodian ABC. Then every employee have to set up their simple IRA with custodian ABC. And that's where the employer would send the contribution. So the employer can send one check with a breakdown of how to allocate those contributions. The employees can transfer their accounts out afterwards, but the good news is that they have to set up their initial simple or their primary simple account where the employer sets up the plan. So that's my top 5 feature. And the simple IRA is my second favorite plan for small businesses because it's easy to set up. It's easy to communicate to employees. I know you're probably asking, what is your number one? My number one is the SEP IRA. It's the easiest plan to set up. It's easy to communicate to employees. And if the employer changes their mind, then they can move to another plan later on. So I like to call it my starter plan, but it's not suitable for everyone. You have to do a suitability assessment to determine which retirement plan is most suitable for your client. And there are a long list of questions that you're going to ask your client. I do have a suitability questionnaire that I create for my clients that they use to determine which retirement plan is suitable for their clients. And that's my top 5. I hope that helps you help your client. My name is Denise Appleby, and thank you for listening.